Super. So again, thanks everybody for joining. So my name is Devojit, and I will be your instructor for 3 days for this RDS bootcamp program, right? So the whole expectation of this entire bootcamp, it is not level 100 or 200 discussion. It is like level 300 and 400 discussion we are going to discuss. So the whole intention of this program is something like the production use case discussion. Okay, so production use case discussion in terms of what exactly you may expect some of the customers requirement to address those requirements, some of the errors, troubleshooting limitations. So what I experienced so far in my journey as a database specialist, as a solutions architect also. So those discussion definitely will discuss time to time. So it's kind of workshop and bootcamp, you can say. And I need your active participations, and it's very, very valuable program for you guys, because what I think that we usually don't see this kind of opportunity where we'll have the only particular topic of AWS, and then we'll deep dive into that particular service and explorations of that particular service and features around, right? So that is the whole intention objective of this particular 3 days program. So today my plan is to stay till 7:30, so that would be solid 2 hours we'll have, and then subsequent days for another 2 more days that we'll have, that I will share or broadcast the date and time as well. As per your availability, you can join. Okay, and anyways, the inter sessions will get recorded. I still can see a lot of folks keep on joining. All right, so what is RDS? Okay, so RDS is a relational database service, all we know, right? But what are the benefits, what are the advantages we are expecting, or we expect using this RDS, right? That's the questions your customers or maybe your company will ask, your management will ask you that, okay, I have my database running already on virtual machine or server, then why RDS? Why AWS this RDS AWS offers, right? The answer is, this is one of the AWS managed services. Okay, managed service offerings. Okay, so what do I mean by managed service offering? So if you use AWS Amazon RDS, then if you want to scale your database, if you want to get the better performance at database, or if you would like to get advantage of high availability, failover, backup automation, the whole lot of stuff you can achieve by using RDS. But the question is, there are a lot of companies, a lot of database specialists, they ask usually the questions. From my experience, I'm sharing this, that if I go with RDS, do you mean that my entire database administrator job will be zero? Answer is no. Okay, so RDS is a managed service offering. There are a lot of managed continuous or day-to-day database related operations AWS will take care of. Yeah, so I will pause myself, and I will welcome any questions if you have, and then if you have any questions, then you can bring your concerns, suggestions, or ask questions, and I will pause sometime. Okay, so let's start the flow, or let's continue with the flow. So that is something like, this is something typical questions your different company they ask, and that would be your answer if you are going to propose a position Amazon RDS. Like, okay, if you would like to go ahead with the RDS, then still your database related job will be there. That means some kind of SQL tuning or query tuning or store procedure tuning. But the major chunk of the database administrator job, like backup, right, patching, upgradations, right, high availability, disaster recovery solutions, so all of them will be taken care by AWS. That is the beauty and sweet spot of RDS. And I would strongly encourage to you guys, like, if you think that some of the workload is a candidate of RDS. RDS can, so then probably you can use RDS, because your job will be very, very easy in terms of day-to-day managing databases. So if I go to official definition of RDS, yeah, so can you please go mute, guys, whoever not talking? So there's a lot of background noises. Thanks. All right. So now this is a AWS document. You can see public referenceable document right now. What is Amazon RDS and what are the benefits you may expect using that? But we'll not spend much time here. As I said, that we'll get into deep dive in RDS and different functionality, different different use cases discussion that we are going to explore. So probably pretty much everybody know this AWS Management Console. If you are very new to AWS, then it's no problem. So if you are seeing the first time this AWS Management Console, that's also okay. So from this Management Console, you can launch the RDS. Now, there are a couple of confusions around, right? So RDS, Aurora, RDS, recently they have launched RDS Custom, right? So what are all of these, right? So we'll discuss all of them, right? When RDS, when Aurora, when custom RDS. So today, let's start with how you launch your RDS database. And what are the options, settings there? The first we need to know, all right? So from this AWS Management Console, you can search RDS. It's pretty straightforward, from the search option, and you can just navigate the RDS from there. Again, RDS is as I said, is a relational database service. So some kind of, if it is OLTP, so RDS comes under OLTP, bracket. So it's a OLTP database engine, because under RDS, there are, right now, there are 6 database engines. If you just go there and you see there's a, right now you see there's a Aurora, MySQL, Aurora. So what is Aurora? We'll discuss maybe next day. But today you see that actually it's 5, not 6. So MySQL, MariaDB, PostgreSQL, Oracle, and Microsoft SQL Server. Right? So that is the console. That is the user interface of RDS. And now there are a lot of options, a lot of settings, features, functions, right? We'll now discuss. So if you would like to deploy MySQL, then you have to choose MySQL. Or if your company is interested to use PostgreSQL, that PostgreSQL. So now, as the enter session and subsequent sessions are all about to discuss production use case at the same time. So what I can see, many companies, their trends are going to going towards PostgreSQL, right? So earlier it was MySQL and PostgreSQL both are open source database engines, but now you see the MySQL is a product of Oracle, and many customers, they feel that right now the MySQL open source or community editions, maybe in future they have a fear, maybe Oracle will some kind of licensing terms and policy will come into the picture. So now they are slowly avoiding MySQL, from my experience, I'm saying. But many companies now, they are moving towards PostgreSQL as well. Okay, but anyways, that's not a concern, but this is something, the trends I can see. So MySQL and PostgreSQL, the difference between that in terms of the adoptions. And of course, the MariaDB is there. Oracle is another, very, very stable database across the world, right? So if you ask me what is the most stable database, relational database database service or database offering that you see from your experience, then I can straight away answer that definitely Oracle, but it's a huge license problem. So others, you are saying, asking something, just bit of you're echoing your voice. Could you please?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, sir. This is not my voice. I'm sorry.
No problem. So you're not asking any questions, right now?
No, no, no.
Okay, so feel free to ask questions. Don't worry. Okay, so I'm happy to take questions. So what I was saying, the Oracle is definitely a very, very good database, but it is very expensive sometimes. But again, there's another database, very popular database engine, which is Microsoft SQL Server, right? So the adoption of Microsoft SQL Server is also good. And there are many customers, they are using Microsoft SQL in AWS, even though it's a Microsoft product. So probably you are thinking, okay, if SQL Server, why not Azure? That is a separate story, but Microsoft SQL, so you can host Microsoft SQL Server even in Amazon RDS. Okay, so these are the top 5 database, engine you can host in RDS. So let's start with MySQL, and then we'll explore some of the other database engine as well. So the moment you select MySQL, the first very important, your region. So probably I can see many of you already have a background from AWS. So probably you know what is the region and what is availability zone, the difference between that. I have a slide that I also discuss what is that. But very important that if your customer workload is running on in India, then definitely you have to choose either Mumbai or Hyderabad, right? That is very important, that you have to choose your region very carefully. Otherwise, a lot of problem, not only from the performance perspective, there will be a lot of compliance issue as well, because the data cannot go outside the geographic boundary, right? Geo boundary of particular, every country, they have their own policy. So this is about region. So you have to be very careful and double click on the particular region before you launch your MySQL database. So first you select this MySQL database, and then if you go down, you see there's a edition. So right now, as I said, as on today, AWS offers you MySQL Community Edition. Okay, and if you go down further, you can see there are a couple of options. So this option you see very recently launched, which is called multi-AZ DB cluster. So we'll have a separate discussion on that. It is very useful sometime. And what will be the use cases where you have to use multi-AZ DB cluster? We'll discuss. Okay. And now there's another option called show versions that support that Amazon RDS Optimized Rights. This is also very important. So last week, I faced a customer problem. Customer approached us that their company is thinking to have or expecting a lot of rights in next few months, because their business is growing or they have developed a new product. And for that, maybe they are expecting that there will be lot of rights will be there. So this is something RDS optimized rights. So if you select that, then your write throughput performance will be 2x at no additional cost. So we'll have a detailed discussion, and also we'll see how to deploy our architecture perspective. But right now, let's start with that vanilla RDS configuration. So this is very important, folks. Engine version, right? So there are a lot of cases I personally handled, like if you choose a different engine version, or wrong engine version, or different engine version, then there will be a lot of issues probably you will face, right? So MySQL 8.0, it is the latest offering from MySQL, right? So every database, they have the major releases. So MySQL, their major releases is 8.8, major releases 8, and you can see 31, 32, 33. These are all minor versions, right? So whenever you choose or offer a position or configure your RDS for MySQL or PostgreSQL or SQL Server or Oracle, this engine, which it plays a significant role for not only the performance, but lot of dependency, so that probably it won't work if you choose a different engine version, right? So you see that if your customer, they have 5.7 37, then only you can say, okay, if your existing workload 5.7 running maybe on-premise environment or maybe on different cloud or different location, then they are the right candidate for RDS. If they are using 5.7, 30 or something like that, then you cannot propose RDS because RDS doesn't support 5.7 before the 37 releases, right? It starts from 5.7 to 37. Now the question is, if you are database or if you are related to database administration job or database consultant, probably you know that MySQL 5.7 very soon is going to be end of the life or UL, right? So if you go to MySQL site, you see that Oracle will discontinue this 5.7 by end of 2023. So in that case, your responsibility to educate your customer to upgrade their database engine to 8 right now, because after 2023, Oracle will stop supporting 5.7. And AWS is using this community edition. If your OEM stops provide support, then probably if any problem comes up, then even AWS is not responsible for that. Right? Any questions so far? I mean, you are getting the whole crux of this discussion, right? So far, whatever we're discussing, probably you are getting that. So feel free to ask questions, right? No problem. Okay, hope no questions. So okay, so MySQL 5.7 37. So now, as I said, that it is time for upgradation at least 8. 8 is the latest version. So now for us, let's go ahead with the 8032, and there are different templates, right? So these are all templates. You see that segregation like productions, dep and test, and free tier. So production is all about, right, if your workload, you are going to set up your workload for production environment for high availability and fast, consistent performance. If you need that, some of the companies, they also need the dep and test, right? Because they are developers, they are test or QA guys. They will have separate database for their own testing and development purpose. So that you have to choose dep and test, and you will get certain limitation of if you choose this dep and test for obvious reason. And free tier is something like, if you go to free tier, then you can see some of immediately some of the options are grayed out. The entire availability and durability, you shouldn't expect for that because it's a free tier. But for our case, we will go ahead with the productions mode or production templates. Now under this section, you see there's a deployment options. So right now, as on today, so AWS offers 3 different deployment options. One is single DB instances. Second is multi-AZ DB instances, and again multi-AZ DB cluster, which is very, very interesting. I have a separate slide on that. We'll have a more talk on that. But for our case, it's multi-AZ DB instances. Now there's a question. What do you think that why multi-AZ DB instance is important? It's very straightforward questions, right? Even if your customer will ask, okay, I need this so why do I need these multi-AZ DB instances? Then what would be your answer for that? Anybody can answer. This is a very basic question that I'm asking.
This is for high availability. If one goes down, the other instance would be available to serve the applications.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a very straightforward answer though. So this is for the high availability. So if your one database instance goes down, as Farhan rightly explained, then your second instance will automatically comes up and will take a failover. That's the point, right? If you go ahead with the, let's say, if you stick to your on-premise environment, let's say you are not using RDS, okay? A very traditional way, you have servers and and you would like to achieve this high availability option, then there's a lot of configurations you would to perform, right, to do so. Let's say if your one instance goes down, then your second instance will come up, and then a lot of configuration also you need to do. But here it's very, very easy. It's a very single click. Okay, so Amazon has already done for you this multi-AZ, this high availability option. So I will also explain, I have the PowerPoint presentation, how exactly it works under the hood. But this is something like if you have the multi-AG option, then you really don't need to do anything in case any disaster happen. Then your second node is already there at standby mode. It will come up and it will take failover. Okay. So that's the whole option. So we are going to do multi-AG, not a single DB instance, because there's a lot of risks there, right? So there are a lot of questions people usually they ask that, okay, if I go ahead with this multi-AG DB instance, should I need to pay additional amount? Answer is of course, because going by this option, you have two instances, right? One is definitely a primary instances, another is a standby instance, which is actually running all the time. And definitely you need to pay for two instances price. Okay, straightforward answer. So this is something also you need to know, that there's a cost also associated with this multi-CDB instance options. Now, under the settings, it is again for any database you need to have instances, right? The database instance, and under the instance you can have multiple database. So if you are database administrator, or you know, or if you came across with any database configuration, you know that there's an instance, and under database instance you can create multiple databases, right? So I'm going to do exactly the same thing. Let's say our database instance name is RDS Bootcamp, and once you are done with that, then it is asking, okay, what would be your username and password, right? So this is by default admin, you can change that. So this is actually the username. All right, so this username will have the database level permission, or DOB. Okay, that means that would be the database owner to manage all of the database under the instances. So you know that when you launch any database, there should be a administrator or database administrator who should perform all of the database related work, right? So that is the username I'm going to create. This username or that particular user should have a kind of database access role or database owner to manage all of the database under that instances. Okay. So this is something you need to define. For our case as admin, you can change, like, you know, as per your company policy, but I will go by that admin, and then master password. So here's the thing, you can see there's another option called AWS Secret Manager. So AWS Secret Manager is a kind of service where the database password or secret would get stored there. That means that if you use AWS Secret Manager, then it will be very, very super, secure in terms of your all of the password, all of the credentials of the database will get stored there in an encrypted manner. So we'll also have a different discussion on that, and so that and that particular password will never expose to the bad people or hackers or malicious guys, like, because that particular secret manager will rotate that password as per their scheduled job. So okay, we'll have another slide on that, and we'll discuss what exactly secret manager, how it works from the configuration perspective. But I would strongly suggest that, okay, if you are going to do RDS in a secure manner, to manage the password and everything in a secure way, then you have to store your password in the AWS Secret Manager only. Okay. Okay, we'll see how to do that. But as of now, I am going to define a master password for this username. Now, if you go down, there are a lot of other options and settings there, right? You see there's an option called RDS Optimized Rights. Okay, this is very, very interesting. Like, RDS Optimized Rights means if your workload, or if your company or if your customer, they need some kind of lot of insert into query or update query, right? Usually, let's say a chunk of data they want to get stored in a insert into or update query through those query or stored procedure. then some of the if you enable that, then it will show all of the available or compatible instances, those supports for this RDS optimized right. It's a very new offering from AWS. You can see that there's a new, but this is very effective because in many customer, at least 2 to 3 customer, not many, I propose that on also option, like, RDS optimized rights, because their requirement was very high, write intensive query. So you see that the moment I enable, only selective instances will be there, and there's an option called GD. You can see there's an option called R6G and D. So whenever you see this D, okay, then it is something like the temporary table. So it's kind of NVMe storage, local storage, right? So local storage, all of these instances will have their local storages, and you know that if your database will create a lot of temporary tables, okay, so every company, they have their different database architecture, right? They create a lot of temporary tables, etc. So you can store, or all of the temporary tables can get stored in that particular local storage, NVMe storage. Then your overall performance will be very better, because for the write intensive query, you need a local storage to process those query or temporary tables, right? So that is something, and again, the cost will be very higher for that. And this is something you have. So somebody is asking that what is the intention of this particular code. Thanks, Pushpendra. You are doing a kind of mediator there, but thanks, this is important. So yeah, so what I'm saying that this is very important to understand the customer requirement first, because it might so happen that you propose something X, but customer recommend Y, then you will boil down to a whole lot of money, because also we have to take care of, there's a monetary involvement, right? There's some kind of costing is associated. If they don't need write optimized query, then probably you can go ahead with the normal, like, standard classes, right? And you can just turn it off, and you see there are different instance classes as well. So standard class, memory optimized classes, and burstable classes. Okay, the standard class, it includes M series instances. So in AWS, all we call it M class, like different t-shirt t-shirt instances, right? So M series, R series, there are, so you can see there's a memory optimized R series. But for our use case, we can go ahead with the M series, or we can go ahead with the burstable classes, because it's pretty cost effective for this demo. So DB T3 micro is okay, or we can just go to a bit higher, T3 small. And now if you go down, you can see there's another section called storage. This is very important. Again, there's a just 2 to 3 weeks back, I got a customer, and they are saying that all of a sudden their RDS is very slow in terms of performance. And so we tried to see all of the possible reason for that, did a root cause analysis for that. Also, we'll discuss how to do that. Okay, in this entire 3 days program, we'll discuss how can you do a troubleshooting, what are the troubleshooting tools and options, or tools and service you should use for that. So a whole lot of interesting things are waiting for you guys, but this is a first session. So this storage, you need to choose very carefully and minutely, because if your customer workload is lot of IO intensive workload, okay, then IO of SSD IO1 is a right choice. Okay, so if you choose this provision IO of SSD, which is IO1 is the API name of that particular storage class in EBS, so then you are expecting a very better input output performance, okay, for that particular database. Because probably that every database works, if you write any data into a database, what happens, right? So it will store your data into hard drive. Okay, so and if your application requires a lot of IOPS to store the data very, very frequently, very large amount of data you want to insert into databases, then the recommendation is you have to choose a right storage type. So IO1 is one of them. If you need to have a very higher IOPS, you can see you can actually increase the IOPS up to 80,000, which is quite higher, right? So 80,000 IOPS you can choose if you go to this mode. But if you go to GP3 and GP2, then you can see there's a that IOPS, it comes along with that particular storage. So, and if you go to GP2, then again, no such differences. So for our case, and even for different customer, they prefer to use GP3 if their load is normal and it's kind of standard storage that you may position. All right. So now here in the allocated storage, so this allocated storage, that means you can start with minimum 20 GB and maximum 16 TB of the storage, right? So for our case, it's 20 GB. Again, cost will get associated for that. And now, if you navigate the advanced settings option, you can see there's a kind of hard-coded like 3000 IOPS I can get for that. Okay, so now see the magic. If you increase that, and maybe you can increase 5,000 or more, then you will get an option to define your provision IOPS, right? That means if your customer, they need a better IOPS, but still they would like to choose GP3, okay, then there's an option like if you define the storage. So if you go to 100 storage, then this option still will gray out. If you go to 200, then again it will get gray out. So but if you go to 500 or something like that, then this option is active. Now you can define your IOPS capacity over there, right? So that option also you need to explore in terms of as per your customer requirement. So for our case is 20. All right. So next option is storage autoscaling. So this storage autoscaling is a very nice feature, and I see customers they are getting benefited out of that, because if you enable storage autoscaling, then what happened in your on-premise setup, that sometimes your storage is running out, and it's a very common problem, right? Then you need to increase your storage at 11th hours, right? And there's a maybe storage already running out, your database is down, or very, very bad situation, right? So in RDS, what you can do, if you enable the storage autoscaling option, that in case your database storage is getting is running out, then automatically additional storage will keep on adding, okay, till the amount you will define there. So by default is 1 TB, but you can see that you can define up to 16 TB, 16384 GB. That means the storage will keep on growing in case the database storage issue or database storage running out. So that option is very I can see effective for real productions for different customers. So you can actually enable storage autoscaling as well, right? Now further, if you can go down, you see there's options called EC2 and all of the stuff. So I'm not going to discuss right now because there's a separate session for that. So this is important to choose a virtual machines, VPC, which is virtual private cloud. So that means ultimately the database is going to install in a network, right? In AWS, that we call virtual private cloud. Okay. So who can tell? It's again very, very straightforward question, right? If your customer would like to deploy the RDS database, then do you propose your database on the public subnet or private subnet? So
should be on private subnet.
Yes. So, and what's the reason behind that?
So that we don't expose it to the public interface. So we expose it only via applications and
Yes, spot on. So that's the right answer. So always and always you have to choose your database in private subnet, because your database shouldn't be exposed to the world, right? So your database will only talk to your application and different application services. Okay, so if your application stays in the public subnet, or even the private subnet, so your database will always in the private subnet, so that your application can talk to database on particular port number with particular connection string. So the answer is private subnet. So you have to define that subnet here. This is not a VPC or networking class, but you should have a private subnet here for your against your VPC. I don't have any such private subnet right now, but I will show you how to do that. So you can see that the moment I select the VPC and the DB subnet group, it is further asking that, okay, would you like to host your database in public or private? Okay, by default it's no. That means in a private subnet. And this public access, that means sometime some of the customers, they still use public access. The reason behind that, if they would like to do some kind of testing or some kind of very initial days of RDS explorations, how exactly RDS work, etc. So that's why still the option is open. So yes, but ultimately for your productions you have to have choose no. So after that, once you are done with that subnetting, then you have to also choose a security groups very carefully. Security groups is nothing but it's a kind of firewall in AWS. Okay, and you have to define the security group, which ports are allowed from application, which port are not. We'll show you how to do that in security group. That means let's say only your application server can talk to your databases, not other servers. And those kind of granular accessibility you can you can define in your security groups. Finally, RDS Proxy, which is very important service, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen here. And RDS Proxy is one of the services I can see the demand is getting increased, because this is a kind of connection spooling. I don't know how many of you ever heard this option. So RDS Proxy is a kind of connection spooling. Let's say, for an example, I keep on getting a lot of customer call every single day that, okay, their database connections problem, okay, and they are facing a lot of database connections timeout and whole stuff, right? So when we see this problem, in major cases, we see that there's a lot of connections are getting, from the application server. So what happened that, if you would like to create a databases and application servers are there, your application will communicate to database all of the time, because that's the job of application server. So it will talk to database and to access the databases, right? So there are a lot of connections or sessions are getting created. Okay, and each and every sessions, they have a different roles, right? Some of the, let's say your application, some of the application module, it is all about to insert some data or some select segments, some of the query to see some of the reports. So these kind of sessions are it will keep on creating from application to databases. And then might chance that after some time there are a lot of sessions will be there, and ultimately your database are no longer to take additional connections from applications. And in many cases what happened that some of the sessions, some of the connections for applications are in idle state, in from database perspective or database language that we call dormant session, idle session, right? And if your dormant session, idle sessions are at very high level, then what happens, the ultimate the right sessions cannot be established because already sessions are there, right? So for these kind of issues, to manage your sessions effectively, RDS Proxy comes into the picture. It has an intelligence, and it can detect, or it senses that which sessions is ultimately important for database, which sessions are active, which sessions are idle, sleep state. So gracefully they can manage those particular sessions, and then overall your database performance will be better. Okay. So RDS Proxy is Amazon own product, but in market there are a lot of other proxy available, like PG Bouncer is one of them, and there are other. PG Bouncer is typically for PostgreSQL in connection pooling. But RDS Proxy is again a managed service. It's a serverless offering that you can create RDS Proxy, and it's very easy to set up. I will show you, and then it would be very good, solutions in case your customer has some this kind of problem. All right. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
And the question is, do we have data encryption for this Amazon RDS?
Absolutely. It's very interesting and important question. We have the encryptions options. So I'll show you how to do that. So if you have the databases, and if you want to encrypt the databases, like from SQL language, Microsoft SQL language that we call TDE, right? Transparent data encryption. The same thing you can do for MySQL or PostgreSQL. So that's something. Answer is yes, you can do. All right. Any more questions? All right. So let's continue. So you can see there's another option called certificate authority. Okay. It is something, again, to answer the same question. Somebody just raised the question. So this certificate authority, if you enable the certificate authority, which is by default, that means it's a kind of server certificate, provides an extra layer of security for validating the connections between being made to Amazon database. That means it would be a fully encrypted, in terms of if you would like to access your database and you want that access should be very much encrypted and with SSL. So this certificate these options will help you to do this kind of security, additional security layer, if you would like to access your database with a secure manner. And by default, RDS provides this kind of certificate for your security reasons. Okay, so since we are using MySQL, the MySQL port by default port is 3306. You may change the port, because these days I can see the security people, they tend to change the database port, instead of the default port, because 3306 and all of the 1433, these are the ports are already people know, maybe malicious people, bad people, evil people, they already know this port, and to confuse those people, many internal security team, they change the database port sometime. So you can change the port, but for our case it's 3306, which is default. All right. Now, if I come to database authentication, so in the database authentication, there are 3 different ways to do that. One is password authentication. That is, if you would like to access the database, you want to define the username and password, right? Which is kind of for authentication purpose. So let's say, your application server. This application server will connect your database. How to do that, right? So in your connection string, in your application web config file, or your your SQL client, from where you have to connect your databases from the application side, you need to define the endpoint, you need to define the port, you need to define the user and password, right? So that's the 3-4 options you have to define, so that your application can communicate to databases, right? So this password authentication still is there, but also you can do some kind of IAM authentication. So IAM is identity access management. So so you can create, instead of database own user ID and password that we defined, admin or something like that, here, right, and top, when we define these options, you can actually authenticate your database by using this password through this IAM of database authentications. So we'll see how to do that. We have to create the users, and the roles you have to define for that. And another way is if you have the Active Directory and if you would like to use your user to authenticate your database through Kerberos authentications, so that option you have to do. In that case, you have to have the Active Directory set up there. We don't have any Active Directory, but for that you have to create this. So now we have come to monitoring sections. So this is very, very important. People, like monitoring is one of the thing, like for troubleshooting purpose, and for any root cause analysis, right? Monitoring is very important, your day-to-day database performance as well. So there are a couple of options that you can enable under this monitoring. One is enable enhanced monitoring. So if you go to enable enhanced monitoring, then what happens? Ultimately, this RDS is getting stored or getting launched on hypervisor, right? Or maybe on the host. At the backend, still the servers there, right? So if you enable or if you configure your RDS, first of all, you don't have any operating system level access, right? So that's another thing. It reminds me, right? If your company or if your customer or if your application needs the operating system level access for certain reason, then RDS is not a right candidate. You have to go to RDS custom or EC2 approach. Okay. But in many cases, in 90% situation, you really don't need to access operating system level, any operating system level access unless until you have any specific reason for that. But anyways, still RDS will get configured on top of a host, a bare metal server at backend. You need to also see sometime that host level CPU and processes, right? So different hosts, they have their own processes, and if you would like to see, okay, what is the current host level CPU, or what are the different processes or threads are running at the OS level, then this enhanced monitoring will really help. And it starts from 1 second, you can see, until 60 seconds. So if you go to 1 second, from my experience, don't do that, because it will have a lot of performance impact. So many customer, they tend to use 1 second, but what I see, there's a lot of issues in terms of performance, like, so 15 seconds to 60 seconds granularity is perfectly fine, unless and until you have any specific reason to see every 1 second audit or every 1 second performance. So now, again, under additional configurations, so this is the first database name or database that we are going to create. Okay, as I said, that under one instance you can create multiple databases, right? Like HR databases, maybe sales databases. There are a lot of different databases, right? So you have to define your database. Let's say for our case is HR, for an example only. So now, again, these sections again is very, very super important, I should say, and we'll have a discussion today also, what is parameter group and the importance of the parameter groups. Okay, so by default, AWS provides a default parameter group against different database engine. Since our case is MySQL, you can see there's a default MySQL 8.0 is getting created, and there's another option called option group. So we'll discuss more on this database parameter group and options group today only. But right now, let's start with this default parameter group. Okay. All right. So this section, it's self-explanatory, saying that backup, right? So all we know that database is very, very important, and it's one of the core of any product of any company. So you need to have a proper backup mechanism to be enabled for your database, right? So that's why AWS by default enable these automated backups. So automatically your database will get backed up to store your databases. So basically the backup is something like, in AWS, the backup is all about the snapshot level backup. Any questions? I think somebody is unmuted. I can see Pashur. You have any questions? Or anybody has any questions so far? All right. So this automated backup you have to enable, and then you can see there's a backup retention period. Okay, by default it's 7 days, but 35 days, up to 35 days you can enable the retention. So all what is retention. I'm not going to explain what is that, because it will maybe in interest of time. So you have to enable your automated backups with a proper retention as per your company requirement. Many companies, they have the requirement like 30 days. That's a very default retention requirement for company, I can see. But many companies, they have for some of the compliance reason, they would like to store or retain the database more than 35 days, or more than month, maybe 60 days, 90 days. In that case, there's a mechanism that you can store additional this backup into S3. So we'll discuss how to do that. How can you store your additional retention in S3 so that you can meet your company's compliance. Now, during the backup, you can see that there's an option called a backup window. So sometimes what happens that you have to choose a proper or right backup window, because if you don't define that window, so anytime AWS will trigger that backup. And sometime you have also noticed in your environment, if you trigger any backup, then there will be slight performance degradations, right? Maybe some of the brief IO freeze and something like that. So these also recommendations from AWS that you have to choose a proper right window so that your database performance will not get hindered. Okay, so that is something keep in mind, that choose a proper window, maybe particular time, particular window. So there's another option called backup replications. So backup replication means, let's say you want to keep another copy in offsite from a disaster recovery perspective. Let's say your company needs, okay, I have my entire database on Mumbai, but for some reason, I want to replicate my entire database backup to Hyderabad region or for some other region. For a disaster recovery, in case my entire Mumbai goes down or something goes wrong, then still I have another copy of that database backup in different region as well. Okay, so this is something, the backup replication. So there are a lot of settings. I'll not spend time today for that, but I will also show you how to do that in subsequent days. So maybe for our case, you see there's a destination region Singapore, or so that if we enable that, so what happened that Amazon at backend, it will keep on copying your data from Mumbai to that particular region on your behalf. So you see that how easy your life will be going with RDS, because a lot of automations is already there, like backup is automated, and all of the high availability is automated, etc. So now somebody asks, okay, how can you do encryptions? So again, it will answer your query that you have to choose the encryption from this option. So if you would like to encrypt your databases, then there's an option called encryption. You have, by default, it's enabled, by the way, and you have to define a proper key. Okay, key is key management service, which is a AWS term. So there's another service from AWS by which you can encrypt your data by using this key. So you can create your own key. By default is AWS RDS, but you can create your own custom key in the from the AWS KMS option. So to answer your query in custard manner, yes. So if you would like to encrypt your database during this launch process, you can enable, or you can enable later point of time when you think that, okay, I need to encrypt my entire databases. And that's the option. So now logs, okay, if you are system administrator, if you're database analyst, or maybe database administrator, or maybe different IT role you're holding right now, or solutions architect, whoever you are, you know that logs are very, very important for our day in out job in terms of troubleshooting and audits, right? So for MySQL, you will get these 4 logs. You can enable those logs: audit, error, general, and slow query log. But from my experience, what I have observed, like audit log, error log, and slow query log is good. But sometimes what I face that if you enable general log, then there will be a lot of tendency for performance and the storage issue. I'm not saying it is bad. You must not enable that. I'm not saying that. But from my experience, since it's a whole discussion, whole intention of this program is kind of production use case discussion as well. So you can avoid this general log unless and until you really need that. But this audit, error, and slow query log are important to enable for further troubleshooting, right? So I'll show you what is slow query log, some of the examples I got from one of my customers. So they are, few months back, they are having a lot of issues in the overall database performance, okay? And we started investigating what exactly the problem was. And then we asked, there are 2 logs, error logs and slow query logs. And ultimately, they were able to share those logs with us. And we have gone through the logs and found that error related to a particular query. Then we suggested to fine tune their query and store procedure. And they fixed that and their problem has been solved. So that's something, an example I'm going to put on the table, like, what is the importance of logs, and enabling the logs for the real production environment is really, really important. Okay. So now if I'll come to maintenance option, as far as maintenance is concerned, so maintenance is something like Amazon RDS will automatically, upgrade your minor version. Probably you remember that when we started our day today, I said that there is an option called major version and minor version for any databases like 80, 32. So this 32, this 31, 33, these are all minor version. And these 5, these 8, these are all major versions, right? So again, very recently, I have got a customer call, and they are saying that, okay, they would like to upgrade their database, okay, version from minor to minor version, I mean 31 to 32. So then our answer, it was like, it won't be a problem because it is already enabled there. So automatically, whenever the new version, minor version upgrade and available, Amazon RDS will automatically upgrade your version. But again, for real production environment, I don't recommend to enable auto minor version upgrade even. Okay. Because what happens that if you enable auto minor version, then automatically Amazon will upgrade your minor version. And if your application is dependent on even the minor version upgradation issue, or there's maybe it's not compliant or compatible with that minor version upgrade, then entire application will be down, or your application will perform differently. Okay, their behavior will be different. So I would recommend that don't enable auto minor version upgrade even for your real productions environment. Let customer choose that when they would like to upgrade even the minor version. Okay. So that is something you also keep in mind. See, there are a lot of options there in RDS, right? But it might so happen that AWS provides all of the options, but it's you have to judge that which version you have to select for which situation, right? Because if you are a database administrator or database consultant, even small version upgradation, I personally saw it will actually impact your entire applications. Okay, so don't do that. All right, so now maintenance window. So maintenance window means when if you even enable this minor version upgrade, right? So when Amazon will do that on behalf of you. So you have to define, okay, maybe on weekends, Sunday or Saturday, when there's no load. Okay, so that will be a ultimate time that you can choose that maintenance window in a proper time, so that in case anything bad happen or anything, let's say abnormal happen, then you will have still time before actual hit Monday morning. You see that even Monday morning is a peak time, and if something bad on Monday morning, then it is not good for you. So even if you enable auto miner version upgrade or any maintenance is happening, so choose a right proper day and time. Maybe Saturday and Sunday would be good for any maintenance. Okay. So you have to define the proper window for that. This is something enabled deletion protection. So if you enable that, then RDS will not get deleted. So I'm going to quickly launch create database. And now again, I'll pause myself. And if you have any questions so far, I will discuss later. Okay. So right now you can see the database is getting created and it will take some time. I will discuss a lot of things here once my database is up and running. But in interest of time, what I'll do that I will bring up some kind of presentations in front of you to have more understanding about how RDS works, MySQL, and what will be how can you set up a proper high availability and disaster recovery with few clicks very quickly. So if I go to the presentations mode, you see my screen, my presentations, right? Because I have just moved to my presentation. Just let me know if you still see my PPT right now, or you can still see some other window because I cannot see.
No, we can see.
Okay. So yeah, thanks. So you can see is very basic standard slide, which is region availability zone. If you have already started working with AWS, if you are working with AWS, then you know what is that. But still, I will spend maybe 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll move to next slide. So this is a global infrastructure footprint, and in Amazon AWS there are many regions across globe. So region is a global presence of AWS, right? And inside region there are multiple AZs that we call availability zones. Okay, and you can see the different AZs. There are cluster of data centers, and they are in the different meaningful distance. So each and every availability zones, they are separated each other. They have their own independent power supply, security, and other setup. And all of these AZs are connected internally with dark fiber, low latency, high throughput internal connections, right? So that means if I will consider this availability zone A is a data center, and this availability zone B and C is other data centers. There are other data centers, and they are interconnected. That means if I host my RDS instance in AZ-A and in AZ-B in my standby, then in case my AZ-1 goes down, then AZ-B will be still there for failover, right? So that is the whole concept of this region and availability zones. You can see there's a region 1 and region 2. So on my right is region 2. That means if region 1 is Mumbai and region 2 is Hyderabad, then even you can distribute your entire workload in a disaster recovery fashion, right? So in region 1, I have a setup, and region 2, I have a setup. And in case any entire region goes down, then your region 2 will bring online for the failover. That is a perfect use cases for the disaster recovery. Now, question for you. Why do you think that, let's forget about this region. So let's say if I would like to go ahead with this single region, and if I put my first database node, region 1, availability zone A, and second node in availability zone B, then is it a high availability or disaster recovery use case?
It will be HSR, I think. High availability.
Absolutely. So this is a HA. Absolutely. You are right. But also, as I said, that since availability zones are separated and they have their own independent power supply, then independent their infrastructure setup, security. So sometimes your HA can also be a DR. That means it's a HA plus DR combined situation you can also position to a customer. But again, it's a debatable topic. I'll not get into that. So that means, you know, if you,
Sir,
please.
can you little bit explain on this topic? Because uh,
Hmm.
like if we want to have a like zone B of region 1, we can place it at region 2, and it we make it like a real-time synchronization. Then we can solve like HA and DR from the same thing also. Why we would go for both things? If you can
Yeah,
explain
it's a very good
on this
question.
end.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
region, so let's say if I don't have any region two, okay, let's say if I would like to have only one region, and if my database node A and node B will get split in zone A and zone B, yes, I agree that it's a typical use cases for HA only, because in the same region, different data center, high availability option. But what I'm saying, that it is a very less possibility that your entire region goes down or all of the availability zones goes down. So you can place this option like availability zone A and B combination, HA plus DR at the same time, because you can easily go to this region 1 or region 2 concept, which would be ultimate your actual DR solution. Okay, but here there are some of the costs associated, right? There's a data transfer out between regions, and then that, another servers. So many customer they chose the multi-AZ as a HA plus DR solutions as well. But many customers, they don't agree with that option. They say, no, whatever you're saying, we don't agree, because this is ultimately HA, it's not DR. What happened? The entire region goes down, then my entire workload will be down, right? Then where is my DR? So on the debatable point, the multi-region is ultimately a right DR solutions. But as I said, that many customers, they chose multi-AZ as a HA plus DR combined solutions as well. Yeah, you understand?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So let's get into a different slide. So I'll not spend time here. And also, what is this option, RTO and RPO. So for disaster recovery purpose, that is the ultimate key factors, right? What is RPO and RTO? So recovery point objective and recovery time objective. That means that if your company choose a RPO, let's say 1 hour or 30 minutes, that means it will be a potential data loss window. That means up to 30 minutes, they are okay to lose any data. That's a tolerance level. And RPO means how fast you can bring up your database in case any disaster happen. Okay. So that is something for any disaster recovery. These are the very, very key pointers. So you have to ask your customer that if you are looking for a DR solution, what is your RPO and RTO, right? And they have to define that RPO and RTO. If they're saying, okay, my RPO is 30 minutes and RTO is 2 hours, then you have to provide the solution in that fashion. Okay. And then there are different way, like what is synchronous, asynchronous replication, that we are going to discuss. So I'll show you architecture, how exactly it works for single AZ. Okay, let's say you are not okay for the multi AZ for some cost purpose, or let's say your customer, they don't they cannot afford that much of cost, right? So in that case, the single AZ availability, it will work something like that. Let's say in AZ1, I have application servers. In AZB, I have application server. AZC, let's say I have application server. That means I have my application server spread across different AZ, and maybe I have a load balancer, everything. I will not get into that because this is a database session. But I have only one database instance in only single availability zone, which is availability zone A. Okay. So now what will happen in case if I just click, let's say my RDS is down. So what happened? My entire applications across AZ, they are down, because they will see 500 data or 400 or something like, because they don't have any database to access, right? Maybe their application level, they have different application level and different ability zones. From the application perspective, they have a full tolerant, fault tolerant, everything, right? They have a different application server. But for your database, there's only a single database. Now, if it is gone, then what happened? The entire application is gone, right? Now, in that case, if your company or if your customer, if they are okay, we can tolerate that much of downtime, okay? Because if it goes down, then nobody can say how fast or how soon your main database engine will bring back, okay? It depends the complexity of the problem. So if your customer is okay about that much of downtime, then single is still fine. But in today's world, nobody likes downtime, right? Everybody needs zero downtime. So in that case, multi-AZ will come into the picture. So in that case, if your entire single AZ availability goes down, let's say your entire AZ goes down, then what happened? Again, the same situation, right? Then you need to wait till the time entire AZ will bring back. We don't know the complexity of this downtime. But if you go to the multi-AZ replications, then what will happen? In this multi-AZ replication, you can see on my left is a primary database. And this primary database, it has their own EBS volumes, which is elastic block storage, which is hard drive, right? So every database, they have their own hard drives, right? And on my right, it is my standby instances running in AZB. And it has got their own EBS volumes, right? Now, if you go to the multi-AZ replication, there will be a synchronization between these two, storage, right? That is something concept called as synchronous replications. For again, it's very, very important, guys, that you have to remember that for multi-AZ replications, from the database perspective, it is always a synchronous replications. Okay, that means you know what is synchronous replication, right? This is something like it is a secure way for any replications. There are two options. One is asynchronous, one is synchronous, right? Synchronous replication, if you choose synchronous replication, there's a sure shot that your data will get replicated on the other side. If you go to asynchronous replication, then there's no guarantee that your replication will be absolutely okay or not. Okay, asynchronous replication is always faster than synchronous replications. So now you can see there's a synchronous replications between these two nodes. And now let's say if I do any write commit, let's say my primary database does have kind of write commit, which is kind of a insert query or insert into query or update something. So what happens? That the moment I will write something on my primary database, and then the same write information will get replicated on my secondary node, which is running on AZB. Okay. So that is a kind of pictorial representation how exactly it's happening back, at background, what is exactly happening, how AWS is handling all of this, replication process. It's very, very important to understand how exactly it works from the architecture perspective. Now, if I go and show you multi-AZ failover process, then it works something like that. So I've just explained, right? So there are different AZs now and the same application servers. And now you have two nodes. One is RDS MySQL primary and RDS MySQL secondary. And you can see there's always a replications happening with a physical level replications, which are synchronous replications. And you can see the arrow is from my left to right, right? Now, in case my RDS primary goes down, what happened? Since my replication is already synchronous, so that means all of the data by that time it is there on my standby instances. So my RDS secondary node now has become primary, and automatically all of the application servers will start communicating to these databases, which is now primary. Okay. Now, maybe you are thinking, okay, sir, what about the connection string? Because in our on-premise environment setup, in case this type of situation happen, then we have to change our connection string parameter in application, right? Because the secondary node, they have the different host ID, host name, different IPs addresses, right? So I have to change so that my application will understand what is my secondary node and all now has become primary. But in RDS, everything is automated. You really don't need to change anything. I'll show you how. So there's a only common endpoint will RDS will generate, and that common endpoint you configure at the application web config file. That means in case this kind of situation happen, you really don't need to change anything at the application's level, because your application by that time already knows, how to reach your secondary instance, which has become primary. Okay. Now let's say this instance has brought back. So now it is back online. Now you can see the earlier it was primary, now has become secondary, because this second instance has become primary. So now replication has started from my right to left to right. Sorry, right to left. That means earlier it was left to right, but now this instance has become primary. So this instance has become secondary. So again, anything I don't need to do in on-premise setup. You need to do a whole lot of change in configuration, so that you need to do all of the settings again and again. But here in RDS, it is absolutely automatic way, so that the moment your this instance will be like a secondary, so your primary and secondary application will be there as a failover mode. So now it is saying that it is from my right to left. So another thing is, if you go to the multi-AZ failover, then the failover time you think like, okay, during this entire failover time, maybe some of the downtime I have to foresee, or I have to consider in my entire solutions. So for this multi-AZ failover timeline, if you configure multi-AZ, then you can expect the typical failover time within 1 to 2 minutes. Okay. And now question is a question time. Why do you think that why this 1 to 2 minutes time is still required for this failover? So let's say my secondary has become primary, and then this entire failover time needs a 1 to 2 minutes, so that the application will start communicating to secondary server, secondary node, within this 1 to 2 minutes range. Why do you think so? Which component will take time for that, so that it's 1 to 2 minutes you have to wait for? Anybody can give it a try.
Sir, I think maybe as it says in the slide as well, DNS cache might be wiped out, like TTL for DNS might take time to override the entries for DNS with the new IPs of secondary.
That's absolutely right answer. You can see on the slide even, so there's a DNS propagations there. And that is the reason that, you need to wait for some time for DNS propagation. But when we discuss Aurora, if you choose Aurora, MySQL or PostgreSQL, then you need to wait only few seconds, only 30 seconds. Why? So you need to wait for my second class for that. So there's in Aurora, you don't have any DNS there. There's a different mechanism, so that if you go to Aurora, even for this kind of situation happen, failover, so within 30 minutes, your failover will be there, and there's no DNS propagations. So we'll discuss more on that. But for RDS case, yes, there is the DNS. For this DNS propagation, you need to wait for 1 to 2 minutes. All right, so let me close this slide right now, because I have a lot of things discussed. But let me go back to our AWS Management Console and see how does it look like. Okay, I think it's there. Okay, you can see the okay. Before I get into that, anybody has any questions? So feel free to ask questions, guys, because it is an open forum and there are a lot of things are pending. I mean, upcoming, not pending. So we'll get into there. But if you don't understand right now, then probably rest of the sessions and days you don't understand. Anyways, so I think silence I can consider no questions. So you see the database right now, status is available. And now if I expand that, let's say if I just click on this RDS Bootcamp database instance, then another window will come up, and this window will show a whole lot of things. Now it's time to discuss some of the use cases. Okay, so production use cases, issues that I faced recently or in my past. So number one production use cases related to parameter group. As I said that when I created the databases, I said that parameter group is very important, one of the components. If you go to parameter groups, you see there's a parameter by default, which is MySQL 8.0. Okay. If you click on the parameter, there are a lot of MySQL level parameter, because as I said in RDS, you really don't have any operating system level control. Okay, you will only have the database level control. You cannot have any access to, you cannot access operating system, right? But now if you want to change any parameter related to your databases, okay, then how can you do that? Because your database developer, let's say, or your application developer, or maybe you as a database, you are as a database, you need to change or you need to modify some of the database level parameters. So that is something here, this parameter groups all about, like you can change, modify certain parameter group metrics from there. And very, very important that if you don't know, or if you're not confident about this option, then don't change that. Okay, the first production use cases. So recently I got a customer call, and they are saying that their storage is running out all of a sudden, and very frequently it is happening. Okay. Second use case, another customer, they are saying that for last 3 to 4 days, their memory, their free memory problem. So they don't have any free memory. Okay, they are getting a lot of errors in memory. There's no memory available or something like that. Okay, so now let's discuss about these two use cases. First use cases is definitely a storage level issue, and storage level issue can happen for many reasons. Okay, first and foremost reason is very common reason is number of temporary tables. Okay, let's say you have certain storage. Let's say you have got a 500 GB or 1 TB storage you define, right?
ನಾನು ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ ನಾನು ಅಲ್ಲಿ.
Okay, so in that case, even if you have a sufficient storage, let's say your database size is 50 GB, that's the expectation you have for the database, right? But still your every single day you can see that your every day your storage size is getting consumed, and there are a lot of storage contention issue, storage level issue. Then bin lock can be one of the candidates which will consume a lot of storages. Okay, so if you type bin lock, you can see there are different parameters of bin lock cache size, bin lock checksum, and there's a lot of bin lock even the flash retention. So if you don't need bin lock, so you cannot avoid bin lock for MySQL. Okay, by the way, you cannot avoid bin lock because bin lock is a kind of lock which is a kind of redo locks in the database. If you know redo locks for Oracle, for SQL Server is a transactional log files, right? The same way in MySQL is a bin lock. So bin lock you cannot off. Okay, if you are enabling automatic backup. So if you have set automatic backup in MySQL, then you cannot turn off bin lock. Or if you have the multi-AZ setup, you cannot turn off bin lock. But what you can do that you can set or change or modify those values which will restrict to grow further your bin lock. Let's say bin lock cache size, or a bin lock you can define also bin lock, there's another flash. Okay, so If you don't know, as I said, or if you are not confident about, like, you can see the maximum binlock size, which is 30. So you can reduce the binlock size as well. So let's say I don't need that much of binlock size, which is by default. And I want to restrict the binlock size is not more than X amount. So from here, you can actually change the binlock value. So all you have to do that, go to edit parameters, and you have to change something like that. Okay, even the binlock size, I think here, not change, hold on. So let's say binlock cache size, you can restrict. So here you can see there's an option called dynamic option. Okay, there are two options, dynamic and static. So whenever you can see dynamic, that means if you change certain values, then you don't need to restart your database engine. Okay, so it will get applied immediately. So let's say for here, I would like to change some modify this option, and if I just save changes, okay, what is saying, okay, let's say 4096, save changes, cannot develop. Okay, that's the thing. So you can see that I cannot modify any default parameter group. Okay, but if you would like to do, or if you would like to change this parameter group, what you can do, that you need to create a new parameter group. Okay, let me go to parameter group and create parameter group. And now you can change, because you cannot change default parameter group. So let's say this is MySQL 8.0 and my name is RDS Bootcamp. And descriptions also maybe something like that, and create. So this is my parameter group. Now you can change that parameter group. So if I go to parameter group, I just select this parameter group, and now let's see if I go and edit 4096 and save changes. Now I can change that. Okay, and you can see since the dynamic, that particular parameter group changes immediately will get applied on that particular database. But there's another use case. I have seen that customer has changed parameter groups. Okay, different parameter group modifications they have done, but still they complain that, okay, after getting changes, even the same behavior from RDS. Why so? Because many customer, they forgot to add that parameter group to your actual database engine. So I've just created a parameter group. It doesn't mean that I have added my parameter group to my actual database engine. I've just created and changed, but I have not added this parameter group to my database. So first, as a database consultant or solutions architect or database engineer, DevOps engineer, you need to first see that whether whatever the changes you have made in that parameter group, that parameter group which is added to particular database or not. Okay, so in our case, database is RDS Bootcamp. If I go to RDS Bootcamp and go to modify, I'll see that the same old default parameter group was added, not the new one. If I scroll down further, go down to extreme, you can see that is default. So I need to change the parameter group. You can see that. And if I go and continue, it will be asking that, okay, when would you like to apply these modifications, right now or in a schedule, on a particular schedule maintenance window? I have a question for you now. Why do you think that these two options are given from AWS? Why cannot apply immediately? Because I said that this dynamic parameter group can be added and applied immediately, and there's no downtime is required also. But why do you think, which situation and when you have to choose this maintenance window? And because there's another production use cases, that's why I'm asking this question. And I saw that many customers, they face problem for that. Okay, I'll answer. So that particular options, it is there if you would like to change any static parameter group, not a dynamic. Let's say you have made some of the static parameter group, and you know the static parameter group, if you want to apply static parameter group, your database server must be restarted. Otherwise, that parameter group will not get applied. Okay. So if you choose maintenance window, because your company, they don't give many downtimes for you, right? Your management will ask a whole lot of 1,000 questions that, okay, why you have so many downtimes? You are saying that you have changed parameter group, one downtime, and again maintenance window downtime, XY. So why so? So many customer, their database team, what they do, they chose that particular downtime, including the maintenance window, because maintenance window, anyways, you need downtime that Amazon will do for the maintenance purpose. But at the same time, if you change the static parameter group and absorb the same downtime within the maintenance group, then your maintenance downtime will be less. I'm not sure whether you got my point or not, but that is something by which you can reduce the overall downtime in a strategic manner. Okay, that is something, a real production use case I'm sharing with you guys. So that is something that whenever you change any static parameter group, try to choose the next maintenance window so that your overall maintenance window, your overall downtime will be less. But for our case, it is apply immediately. So now finally my parameter group has got applied in my databases. So this is a problem for use case one, where the customer was facing some kind of issue in the storage. So now they have fixed the buffer size and all. Now their problem is fixed. Second use case, I said another use case, memory, freeable memory. It is just happened, it's still continue. I mean, I'm working on that actually. It's a live customers, but I cannot show customer thing. But what I can share, I think I have their some of the parameter group settings. Let me check. Freeable memory. Okay. Okay, so I don't have that. So the freeable memory problem the customer was facing, it is because of some of the configuration. So customer was using a T3 series for their productions, which is not good, right? T3 is not recommended for any productions database. Maybe their database is very slow, very small, and not that very heavy databases. But still, but anyways, customer, they are facing this kind of problem, like freeable memory issue. So overall memory was very less. So they came to us, came to me rather, and then they need some solutions. So immediately the solutions that we proposed, which is the buffer cache size less. Okay, again, these are all database terms. But if you know that, then okay. So buffer cache is a database component for any database in the world right now. So it keeps certain portion of your frequent query into a memory. Okay. So that means the recent query can be fetched from the buffer cache. Okay. That's a database component. Every database, they have their own buffer cache, MySQL, MySQL, PostgreSQL. So their buffer cache for T3 was very high. Okay. So if I go to Google and just type AWS RDS freeable memory issue, freeable memory for MySQL, and if I go to this option here, and if I navigate, so there are a lot of things, so I'll not spend time. So these options, I told them to do that. So the parameter group name is InnoDB buffer pool size. By default is always 3 by 4 for MySQL, and you can reduce further to 5.8. So exactly I have done and proposed 5.8, and their problem has gone. But there's another problem has come up that I am working on that. But that's the thing, like if you see this kind of problem, then there's a AWS documentation first to refer, and this InnoDB buffer pool size, if I go and choose that database option, and if I go to parameter groups and just search by name, probably this class is boring because whatever I'm discussing is typically 300 level. If you're not database guy, you lose interest. Many people actually left, but that's fine. I mean, it would be a precious session for you probably in future. So if buffer pool size, you can see that is the default parameter values, which is 3 by 4, and again, it is a dynamic nature. So what we have suggested that as per AWS documentation 5.8, you can reduce that so that your freeable memory problem will be less, okay, or will be over. So they have just changed this edit parameter, and here 5.8, and again the same process, like save changes and apply to the databases. Okay, and the problem has been gone. So how did you determine that when their freeable memory problem? How did you notice that they are freeable memory issue? Simple, because if you go to database and in the monitoring section, you see there's a monitoring under CloudWatch. The CloudWatch is a monitoring tool which captures all of these things, and it just type free memory. And this freeable memory for their use case was very, very less. So from there, we noticed that there's a problem, and then there's a fixation we suggested, and now problem has been resolved, but there's some other problem has come up. The other problem is, now you see, if you read between the lines, you see that if you go by this low number of this buffer cache, then there's another problem that you might need to increase the instance size as well, because you will face some of the RAM issue as well. So since they are using T3 for productions, so T3 is not recommended. So what we suggested that you have to increase your total instance size from T3 to at least some of the T3 or M5 or R5 series, then probably their problem will be fixed. Now, question for you. Apart from that, what do you think that if they don't agree for the instance size enhancement for their cost, and again to for the same problem fixation, so what are the second options you have to suggest them for that particular issue? I mean, so let's say they are not okay for the instance size upgradations for their cost issue or budgetary constraints. Okay, so the answer is,
think about
yeah,
read write. Can we think about read write speed consideration so that it can be faster, other way around?
okay, so you are saying that read write. So basically, you are suggesting that if I change the EBS volume type, or maybe something like that, you are saying, let's say if I go to database and if I select and modify that, and if I go down and see here, we can change something like you go to GP2 and you can maybe a little bit more. Let's say if I increase storage, and you can see even for
because that some part of the storage is considered as cache. So
right.
If I increase that, maybe that, and another was the GP2, the speed. So
right,
maybe that can help other way.
I can take this answer. Yes, that can be a reason that yes, I can choose the GP3 and then I get the provision IOPS, so that I can put a little bit more IOPS maybe, or something like that. So that would be another way. Yes. Okay. Another way is, last way out is, if they don't even want to do that for the storage, then you should ask them to tune their query, because sometimes what happened that if their query is expensive and something bad query, it will consume a whole lot of CPU, RAM, IOPS. They can retune their query and store procedure for further improvement. And this is something you can suggest from Performance Insight. So Performance Insight is another tool by which you can actually see that option. Like, I have not enabled Performance Insight for these databases, but I'll show you this Performance Insight, by which you can see the different expensive query weight types. What are the SQL queries will consume a whole lot of IOPS, CPU, or memory. And also DevOps Guru for RDS has recently launched that, by which you can actually see So this DevOps Guru is a machine learning, service that it will advise you that what are the SQL queries further, improved or poorly performing SQL queries. So that's some kind of DevOps Guru integration you can do. I'll not get into that right now, but these are all possible reasons that if your customer is facing some of the performance issue, then it is not recommended to just go and say, okay, from instance A to instance B, and your problem will be fixed. Okay, because you all know, if you know database always a resource hungry applications. If you give them 64 GB RAM, or tomorrow if you give them 128 GB RAM, or next day if you give maybe better RAM or CPU, it will keep on consuming all of the resources if you don't define a threshold or parameter or limit at the application or the database level. Okay. So again, use case number 3. Recently, we have seen another problem, which is something like that, their performance issue for RDS. And you can see there's a graph by which we have seen that their IOPS and write latency are hugely impacted. Okay, so they are using some kind of R6G 4x large RDS instances, but still they are complaining that whenever they are going to insert 1 million of data, okay, their database performance is very, very bad. Okay, so we deep dive the situation and see every 1 hour this kind of large inserts happening. So there's a customer from a smart meter utility section. So what happened, the smart meter, there are 3.5 lakh smart meter there, and all of the smart meter data is at a one shot they are trying to put into database. So from the database perspective, we recommended that this is not a right approach. What you have to do, that you have to segregate the entire insert into different batches, right? That means batch updates would be beneficial for you. So let's say 50,000 for one batch, another 50,000 insert in another batch. So you hear me okay? It is saying that your internet is not stable.
Yeah, just got
okay, just got
silent for 5, 6, 10 seconds. Yeah. So batch size is a good solution. Another is if the transactions are not locked, maybe that can make it faster.
Absolutely. So the problem is, then once we suggested that their database and application team, they denied this approach. They are saying, okay, we need to change our application code and we don't have much time. You see this kind of tussle in real world all of the time. So if you are the database guy, if you want to, let's say, if you suggest something for code level changes or some kind of modification, their store proc or query, so their application team, they say no, that's your infrastructure level issue, or we don't have time to retune our things and all. You have to deal with the infrastructure level. So that's some kind of tragedy happens. So the same tragedy happens with us. So since they didn't agree for the batch updation insert process, so then we saw their write IOPS and write latency were super high. So then what we suggested, that we suggested to increase the IOPS, exactly Satyada you said, for this use case, it reminds me. So we told them, okay, you have to increase the IOPS. And since this customer using Aurora, that we'll discuss in second day, Aurora, there's a new service release, which is called IO Optimized. Probably you've heard that name. So this IO optimized options, it would be a fantastic approach sometime if your customers are huge IOPS, okay? Because Aurora has two options. One is IO standard, one is IO optimized. And IO standard has a certain limitations, okay? But if you choose IO optimized, then it will give almost unlimited time kind of IOPS, and so they have changed IO standard to IOPS, and then their problem has been fixed. So that is something like, guys, whenever you get this kind of issue, these 3-4 use cases today, we have just discussed. So real issue, and you need to deal with them. So the thing is that maybe RDS gives you a lot of things, lot of options, lot of function service, but still your database knowledge will remain there. You have to apply your databases and you have to apply your previous knowledges as well. Yes, RDS, there are a lot of other features like performance insight, enhanced monitoring, but sometime what you need to do that, you need to really deep dive the situation, deep dive the problem, and then finally you have to provide the right solutions. Questions?
Dada, it's Anish here. I would like to add one more input on this, especially
Yes.
on this IOPS and throughput. So, and that is a recently use case which we have faced. So, what is happening over there? Even though on the disk level, I provided 1000 IOPS, sorry, 1000 Mbps of throughputs, but on the disk side, it is getting limited to only up to 700 Mbps. I'm not getting more than that. And the reason is, even though we can define the throughput 1000 Mbps on the EBS, but the instance should also support that.
Right.
Instance type which we have selected, it can support only up to 700 Mbps, but we have provision 1000, and that's why we are not getting the required throughput. So we need to check the instance type and its limitation as well when we are provisioning these kind of stuff on the RDS side.
Absolutely, it's a really a very good example. Thanks, Danis, for bringing it up. So yes, I mean, sometimes, as I said, if you change the parameter level things, and in AWS, what happened that this instance comes with their own defined, pros and cons, right? The limitations. So if you use T3 and you are expecting that your IOPS will be very better, okay, even you have changed something in the parameter group, probably it will not get any value addition there because your instance does have the certain limitation. So anyways, you have to increase or upgrade your instance to enjoy that parameters. That is really important again, because even for RDS, even for Aurora, we'll discuss Aurora maybe second day. You will see that even in Aurora, you cannot choose the IOPS. You cannot, I mean, you cannot choose the different database options. Everything comes along with the Aurora instance itself, right? So let's say if you want to have local NVMe storage for large process, and let's say if you would like to have a better storage, let's say you need to have some kind of 2 TB storage. So in Aurora you won't get those options. Everything comes along with your instance family. Anyways, we'll park that topic maybe for second day. So now let me check if I have other things related to parameter group.
Yeah, one more thing related to parameter group is, if we talk about specifically for the Microsoft SQL, right? So there is an option called max memory.
Correct.
And that is really critical, because that will define how much of memory space you are allocating for your SQL. Because SQL is having tendency that it will try to keep maximum memory as possible. So we need to restrict it. Otherwise, what will happen? It can try to it will be resultant in the malfunction of the OS, and that can result into your server got hanged. So we should limit at least it. So now in the current practice, we will limit it around 85%. So 85%, only up to 85% SQL Server can accumulate that out of total memory. 15% we have reserved for the rest.
System. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. So as I said, right, again, it is very important thing. As much as resources you provide to database, so database will keep on consuming all of the database unless and until you define a certain threshold parameter, right? There's a perfect use case that Danis tried to explain, that if you don't define this maximum allocated memory, okay, or some kind of limitations, then it will keep on consuming and you will deal with, you'll end up with the same problem, like no resources at all, right? So this is some of the important discussion on parameter group. And parameter group, there are a lot of discussion in the parameter group. Probably we'll discuss more on that in our subsequent lectures. But there's another interesting story for proxies, the use cases. So again, very recently, there's a very big enterprise based out Kolkata only. They are, they are facing some problem. So the problem is, there's an auction company, and on a particular day, their database team realized that their entire application is down for 10 minutes, not 10 minutes, even later, lesser than that, 7 to 10 minutes rather. Okay, let's say. And they realized that during that time, there's a huge spikes there, huge spikes in terms of connections. Okay, so number of connections were very, very high, and then database cannot take that much of connections. The additional connections dropped out, and then the entire database choked. Their CPU resources got very high, and then there's a lot of issue, and the application finally threw error. So they needed a solution for that. So what we found, that there are a couple of options. The first, they are again in the parameter group. There's an option called maximum connections, right? So you have to define the maximum connections for the database engine. So different database has their different parameter related to maximum connections. So if I just search maximum connections or maximum active connections, something like that. In the connections. So somewhere is the maximum connections you can see, that is again, it is by default defined, but you need to, so for their, first you have to see that what's their maximum connections, and you need to tune and change according to their need. And also proxies which would be beneficial in terms of to manage the sessions. So you can create a proxy, it's a kind of connections pooling, right? So there are different options for MySQL, PostgreSQL, even the SQL Server, and you have to define the connections pooling, and that even this option is very, very important, like connections pool maximum connections. So sometimes I see that even though 100% is not a right approach for that, if you choose 100%, then enter 100% maximum connections will get established. But here probably you can define some of the right percentage for the connection pool. You can see that, for example, if you have set up maximum connections 5,000, specify 50% allows your proxy to create up the 2,500 connection for the database. So don't define 100% all the time. Okay, maybe 75% or maybe 60% or maybe 80%. So that would be how you can set it up, the connections pooling or create proxy. So again, you need to be very careful that when you need a proxy, maybe you don't need proxy sometime because your database doesn't have that much of active connections and all stuff. But if your database or if your customer, they have a lot of connections, then the proxy is a good candidate for that. Okay. So this is something. So I have a couple of use cases around proxy. So number one is that the auction company, that they are now using proxies because their problem was maximum connections limit and all stuff. So they changed their parameter group, and also they have introduced a proxy in their architecture, and now their problem has been fixed. Another problem. So what about the it randomly comes to my mind. So another thing is that customers using Aurora PostgreSQL, and they want to take a dump of that Aurora PostgreSQL. It is nothing related to proxy, by the way. So it is a generic discussion. So now they are facing that, like they cannot take pg dump command. So whenever they are taking a pg dump, they are getting some errors. Okay. So they are getting some of the pg dump cannot be done and something like that. And then for the they took so they are using this pg admin, and from the pg admin they connected their PostgreSQL databases, but pg dump command is not getting succeeded. So always remember that pg dump command cannot establish if your database size is more than 100 GB. So there's a exact situation happened for that customer. The customer had the 120 GB databases, And in AWS RDS, if your database size is more than 100 GB, you cannot commit PG dump. You should follow some other mechanism like DMS or or something like the native replications. I'll not get into that. Otherwise, it is just randomly comes to my mind. That's what I'm saying. But I think it's 7:27. Whole lot of discussion happened. It is just starting. So we have another 2 days. I will share a broadcast the next day and time for advanced level use cases discussion again, and we'll discuss more about the Aurora MS SQL deployment, and also some of the other features and functions related to RDS like multi. Recently, you can see this option called multi AZDB cluster deployment. So some of the use cases around that, what are the pros and cons of this multi AZDB cluster deployment, and there's a whole lot of stuff for that. So any questions, any suggestions, any confusions, please feel free to share. Do you think that this kind of session helpful to add more value addition?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Definitely,
very, very
definitely.
useful. Yeah. And this
Yeah.
specifically the real life scenario of the problems.
Yeah, the situation is, see, nobody, even if you are planning for interview preparation or if you are planning to join a new company or something, nobody will bother. Nobody, if you know Amazon RDS, or you know XYZ, people they would love to hear from you, like what are the use cases you so far you dealt with, and what are the solution you provided, or maybe you face some of the questions from them for this kind of questions, and then you have to answer, right? Because without productions use cases, knowing AWS is absolutely okay, but ultimately the entire thing is you need to know how things work in the productions environment. Okay, that's the whole objective, the entire sessions. Thanks for joining, and I'm really looking forward to have the subsequent sessions, and second or third day I'll share. All right, others, you are saying something? You just unmute yourself.
No. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the session.
Thank you.
very much. It was
Thanks
useful.
Thanks, Ada.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks for your time.
Sir,
Thanks for the
Bye-bye.
participants as well.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, somebody saying something? So then I can wrap up. All right, no question. Take care. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.